Hi, this is Ryan with Better Tattooing, and today we're doing, another aftercare thing. Sorry, my phone is going off. Are you doing that right? Ooh. Okay, now that that's over with, aftercare. Oh, my mic's been picking up a whole bunch of fuzz. I apologize. I couldn't be put on my coat today. Anyways, this is something that is so hotly contested. People don't understand. And I am constantly on people about aftercare because, like, honestly, you could do the best tattoo in the world, and if somebody doesn't take care of it correctly, it won't look good, especially long term. So in my mind, tattooing isn't just the process of creating art and then putting it on the body. It also includes taking care of it afterwards. And this is like, you can think about getting a surgery done. They make an incision in your body and they wake you up afterwards and they say, good luck. No, they've got things that they want you to do to make sure it heals out, decrease the chances of scarring, and they tell you what to do. Now, are surgical incisions and tattoos like wounds? No, not at all. So going to the NIH or, any of the EU health agency and trying to find directives, that pieces of paper, studies that say, this is how you take care of a wound, defining it as different type of wounds, it doesn't mean that, like, because they said do this, that it's going to work for a tattoo. A tattoo is a very specific type of wound. And we usually just call them like this. It's an acute, right, wound, and it's topical. And we're going with how deep into the skin that this wound is, being. Like, when we do a tattoo, you shouldn't see the skin flaying apart along tension lines. What we're seeing is, out of the skin that we're doing here, the majority of the trauma that we have is going to be isolated into the upper layers of the skin and the epidermis, right? This layer, as the needles are puncturing it and going through, is getting chewed up and destroyed. And as the process of healing a tattoo is to reestablish this epidermal layer so that we have a barrier from the environment around us, right? Protecting us from things getting inside there. And it's an acute wound rather than something that is chronic because it's happening and it's not something that is going to be persisting for long periods of time, but it can become a chronic wound depending on what happens after the tattoo is done while you're caring for it, right? So let's get into this. I don't know how long this is going to take, but I've been doing some posts on social media. If you haven't seen it, go check out our social media. If this is too much, you just say, I don't want to do this. There's like 10 slides. You can see it there, and it's easier to digest, as well as you can print them out. I don't care. Put them on your shop or on your wall in a binder or something. Give them to people. Make a card out of it. I don't care. Just as long as the information's out there, it'll be good. So aftercare, do's and don'ts. Normally what we start out with in a traditional aftercare setting, and we're going to be avoiding transparent bandages because we have made a video about it, and I use strong language in it, of course, and I still agree with everything that's on there, but I'm not going to, I might touch on it in a second, but I'm not going to talk too much about it. But we're just going to go with, like, trad aftercare, right? This is just things that we normally would see inside of a shop setting, right? One, everybody's going to say, don't pick it. And if we go to break this down, like, don't picking your tattoo, or like not picking your tattoo is just intelligent, right? Like, if you have a wound and you pick it, it will take longer to heal. Because it's taking longer to heal, there's a greater chance of you picking up an infection, especially normally as it's healing, as you're digging at it, because humans are unique, right? We heal from the top down. Most other things out there heal from the bottom up when there's a puncture inside of the covering of their whatever thing, right? And so when you keep digging at it, what you're doing is you're technically not just removing a scab, you're also removing some of the tissues around it that are in charge of, like some of the remodeling, or even healthy tissues maybe that haven't been, removed by the body and are acting as scaffolding for something else to be put in to pull the thing back together and keep you safe from the environment, right? And so every time you're picking it, you can make the wound larger and larger and larger. And while that's happening, your body is still trying to heal this. But with bigger and bigger wounds that stay open longer and longer, you have a greater chance of getting sick because of it. And this isn't just like small little, infections that are just going to touch and maybe cause you some, discomfort. You can get really sick from doing these things. You could pick up flesh-eating bacteria and introduce it off of your fingers, and then you can die. Now, this is a rare occurrence, of course, but it has happened. So the reason why we say don't pick is just because of that. Now, to talk about what actually happens, because of how we, heal as humans, since the tattoo is going to be aggregated towards the upper layers of the dermis if you're doing it correctly, and our scabbing is usually going to be targeted somewhere, usually around the top, to block it. But there's also going to be other factors that are going to be underneath it, dealing with the trauma that you've imparted into the dermis. Every time you go to remove that, people will say, you can remove part of the tattoo. Is that true? Yes, but with a caveat. Most of the time when we're removing scabs, because the human body heals from the top down, we're actually just going to be continually opening up the epidermis and maybe just the upper parts of the dermis when you have a tattoo that is well done. Now, if the trauma of the tattoo is set very, very far into the skin, even down towards the connective tissues, almost like you've been tattooed with like a scalpel, this may not act the same, right? In most normal tattoos, all you're doing is removing some space and maybe a little bit of the pigment that's implanted into the skin. And when you do it, you're actually going to be able to see the colors appear very, very vibrant because there's nothing blocking them now. It's just kind of the pigment in the skin with whatever processes inside your body are holding it fixed, being exposed. That's bad, right? Because now you have a gaping wound that anything that's on the outside of your body can get into and from your environment get into. But it also is going to be forcing additional repair needed around that area. When that happens, we increase the chances of scarring. There is a good chance that that epidermal layer around where it's been picked will end up actually becoming thicker and creating a little bit of a scar in the area, maybe raised, line work or whatever that you can see where the color is. And what happens is because this epidermis is now grown in size, and this can be at times exponential in its size when you think about how small and thin the epidermis is, what happens is the light, as it's coming into contact with that top layer of our skin, the first thing that it interacts with is going to be reflected and refracted at a greater rate, depending on where it's actually going. So what happens is light isn't acting the same way that it should, and it ends up getting occluded, and the things that are underneath it end up looking more faint because light isn't having as easy time getting to it because it has to travel through something more, and in its process of doing that, not only coming down into it to react with the pigment that's in the skin, but also come back through it, it's getting messed up. So it can make the colors appear less vibrant than they are, which usually leads to the idea that picking scabs will reduce the quality of the tattoo by removing some of the pigment. So it is kind of right, but at the same time, not the whole picture. So that's that. That should be the easiest one to go over. I mean, some people love picking wounds. I don't, and I'm not picking on anyone for picking. But if we can stay away from that with a tattoo, it's great. If you are somebody who constantly picks and you have a problem with it, find protective supports to put over top of it. You have sun sleeves or other things that you can put on top of it. And in this case, even using a product like Tegaderm, which still is not going to be recommended for use in most tattoos, may be a good alternative because it's going to create a barrier that you can't dig at. Otherwise, if you don't want to put Tegaderm directly on the tattoo, you can put something somewhere else that you can pick at. Tegaderm on another section of your body that you get to pick at rather than your tattoo is a brilliant idea that I just came up with. Someone else probably came up with it, but might as well just TM that one there. Try to do something if you are in that space to try and alleviate it, right? If you're a person who has air quote sensitive skin and you feel like things are itching and you can feel your body healing and it just bothers you, try to find something else that can alleviate those things. Cool packs, hot packs, things like that to cause a different type of stimulation and take your mind off of that is also a good thing to do. So that's number one. Number two, we want to say no swimming, right? Okay, I'm wearing something different because I'm starting off here. All of the batteries on everything that I had died at the exact same time, and I got in a bad mood yesterday and I was like, nah, I'm not dealing with this right now. So I had everything charging all night and we're back here because I actually talked for like 40 minutes and I went through everything and then I seen everything had died. I got no beep, nothing. Mics went out, everything. And I was just like, So we're picking up from where we left off, and hopefully I don't do this incorrectly. I apologize. It was great yesterday. It was like one of those one takes where you're like, I did it. It was perfect. And I looked and I was like, ah! So, anyways, we're getting on to the no swimming thing. So this is something I think is really interesting, right? Because when we think about the no swimming thing, it's pretty simple when we, how we tell most people when we're getting into this, right? Number one is it's for infection control. So what happens is you go into a body of water and that body of water is filled with nasty stuff. You have an open wound, you're going to end up getting sick, right? And that's pretty simple to think about. I mean, even if you have like a chlorinated pool or a hot tub, it's been shocked. There's loads of things that are alive in the environment that are not going to be affected by those types of treatments. And so even if you think that it's clean because these places that may operate these pools or you do it at your own house, you get a product that says that it's clean, it doesn't mean that it's sterile. And that's a big thing to think about, right? Like we take a tablespoon of seawater, go out to the ocean, pick it up. There's like more viruses in that tablespoon, teaspoon, whatever, than there are like stars in the universe, right? So you don't want that coming in contact with your stuff. So it's simple, right? No bathing, no stuff like this. The other thing we need to think about past this, right, is going to actually be production of, and we'll do moisture. And this is really, really, really important, because when we start thinking about having a lot of extra moisture held against the skin, like sometimes when you see those ink sacs, the transparent bandages, they'll have that big blob, which that's actually where I put it the first time yesterday. What happens is, with all that extra moisture against the body, right, the sensing cells that are deeper in the skin that are actually going to be telling your body to produce more moisture to fill in the area, they're not going to get that signal that they are, needed. So they're going to end up turning off. And this we can see happening with the body, right? When the body doesn't need stuff, it stops producing it as necessary, right? If you take testosterone, if you're a bodybuilder, and you take so much of it for so long, your body will stop producing it, right? Leading to hypogonadism, which is fun. Not really. And so with the extra moisture that's held against it, it can actually create additional dryness inside of the skin, especially when you take that bandage off and remove it. And this is what we'll see a lot of times with people who have done like a more wet heal, we'll say, right? Where you have a transparent bandage on, there's an ink sac, you pull it off after day 3, even if it's been resorbed into the body, and the tattoo will look fantastic, but then it'll peel again, right? And that happens because the wound that is there is technically still open. I mean, it may have started remodeling in the space where it's a little bit wet, but then the skin will end up desiccating, and when those things that are producing moisture inside your body pick back up, it's going to start creating that space where your body's going to go, oh my gosh, this stuff isn't actually healed. It'll go through a second shed, and then the actual tattoo will be healed. So the no swimming thing is realistically, it's just like no extra moisture, right? Like we don't want, I'm going to do extra moisture. We don't want that to be a big thing, because the more that you keep throwing onto it, the more that it's going to slow down some of the processes that are necessary to heal your skin. And I mean, this literally does go into our third one, right? Our third one is like, when we're thinking about aftercare in the trad sense, it's to moisturize. And this is where everyone seems to just get, whoa, right? So we're thinking about the what to do it with, how often, the why, when. Oh my gosh, we can do all of the questions on this, right? We don't need to do who, because that's, you were the client. I'm making myself laugh today. It's because I'm just trying to get back into this. It was so good yesterday. Anyways, I don't need to harp on it. So when we're getting into moisturizing the tattoo, the idea behind why we do this, right, is that when your body is healing, it requires some level of moisture to not only like transport cells out with signaling, all this other stuff, but it also keeps it pliable. If you get a tattoo on your forearm and it dries out, every time you bend and move, that skin is going to be underneath some type of tension, even more than it is just naturally laying on your body, right? And so that flexibility, is like really key, because the more pliable that your skin is and the more it can deal with those stresses that you're imparting on it when you're just existing in your, man, my phone's going crazy, in your environment, the less likely it is to continue to, you know, create these small micro fissures, is what they're called, where the tension of the skin being pulled apart, especially on those scab lines, it ends up creating small rips off of it. And when it rips, that body's going to end up trying to fill that in. So if it's too dry, you end up bending and moving, and through that just existing, those scabs are going to get bigger and bigger, which is going to delay your heal time, because they're going to keep growing in those spaces where the wounds are to accommodate that amount of flex that needs to be done. Inversely, when they start getting really big, if you're trying to compress it after that stretch occurs, then you end up getting crushing, which will also cause additional ripping. So it's just this nasty cycle where if it isn't moisturized, the continuous like just living is going to increase the scabbing that you're going to see, which is going to delay healing, right? So now that we know like kind of why we do the moisturizing, what should you be using? Now, in most people's cases, and I think we have a couple videos about this already, but we're just going to condense it all down into one because the social media stuff that just came out. What we want to see being used is something that is comfortable with the client's skin. Products don't really matter, right? It's not brands. Everyone say don't use perfume. In my practice, I don't care. And the reason why is if your shampoo that you use has perfume, if the conditioner, the laundry soap that you have, the dishwashing detergent you have candles in your house, all these other things that are going to be releasing those VOC scents, they're always around. They're changing one product is not going to change the fact that you are constantly surrounded by these things. So if you're in a scent-free home and you have people who may be sensitive to scents, fine, that sounds absolutely perfect. But the assumption that doing this is going to help, that doesn't matter. More than likely, if you have something like a shampoo and conditioner set that is from a specific brand, they also offer a lotion, go get the lotion as well, right? It's trying to stick with those same branded things, even if it has, you know, scent, is more likely to not influence your microbiome as much because they're probably going to have like chemicals in them, or at least chemical, you know, mixtures that are going to be more synonymous with each other. And that will increase the chances that your, you know, the skin is just going to be able to accept it better. But what we're actually doing when we do this, right? So products, it doesn't matter. Like some people say, like, I only use Aquaphor. Now, that's fine. We can use Aquaphor if we want to. You can use a lotion. You can use any of these things. But when you start saying about how many times that you're wanting to do this, think about general skin health. When we suggest an aftercare routine for most people, moisturizing once a day is absolutely fine, especially if the tattoo has been done well. If it hasn't been done well and there's massive amounts of trauma, additional interventions may be required, but the initial time, just once a day is enough to keep the skin pliable. And it's because most people, if they were to moisturize their entire body, not just the tattoo wound, but their whole body more than once a day, for a 3 to 4 week period, we'll say a month, they would say that their skin would get nasty. Why? Because it would be over moisturized. Over moisturizing will decrease the total actual moisture production from your body from the ground up, and that will also dry out your skin, which is kind of funny, right? It becomes really oily, nasty, greasy, and so it will decrease the body's ability to actually heal the wound. So if you think that something that you're going to do would affect your whole body in a positive way, doing it to a wound is probably the right steps to take, especially when it's not a deep wound, right? It's not something that is going to be chronic. It's not something that is going to require, you know, medical intervention to try and heal. So if the tattoo's done well, once a day is good. If you have dry skin or it's the winter and you have the heat running, twice a day may be good, like morning and night. And if you have complex skin conditions, which include like eczema, psoriasis, where you're increasing the moisture levels and contents in your bodies more commonly or rapidly, like every day, then sticking to your like product and the amount of times that you do it is fine. And that's also want to say, if you have those type of skin conditions, talking to a dermatologist beforehand to come up with a game plan is great. Right? It's always great. So we'll do like the how often thing. It's just 1x daily is usually all you need for most people, right? If you don't, oh, excuse me. I had a tea before I came out and it's killing my guts. If you need to do this more than that, start doing that to your whole body. And that way you can kind of tell when it's getting nasty, right? Once a day, just on the tattoo, that's fine. If you're going to go for your second one, let's say it's on your forearm, you're going from your fingertip to your shoulder, the whole arm. And then you can start feeling in different spots in your body, right? Rather than touching the tattoo, because dirty fingers, right? And you can be like, oh man, my skin feels really greasy, like in my, you know, ditch, my crook of my elbow, or by my armpit. Maybe I shouldn't put this on. That triggering of like having some sort of discomfort may make you stop from applying extra on there when you really don't need it. So if we have that, let me when, yeah, how, that's fine. Basically, like the moisturizing thing is, and this is, this is something I think everyone needs to keep in mind when you're a tattooer or a client, is that when you get into taking care of a tattoo initially, you have a large investment that's gone into marking your body that's supposed to last for a long time. So there could be anxiety over how to care for it. And in my experience, 20 plus years, people tend to way over care for it. And every time that they overcare for it, as the tattooer, you can expect more pigment loss, more chances of scarring, and accelerated aging, which is going to make the tattoo look bad when it comes back, right? You can mitigate a lot of that with having really good technique, but 50% of this is going to be done at home. So, you know, check-ins with your people, do the things that you need to do to make sure that they're following it. And sometimes just handing them a card isn't going to be enough. You're going to have to really try to like express exactly why they're supposed to be doing what they're doing, and be sure to adapt it to care that they already have. Nowadays, compared to the 60s when a lot of the wound studies were being done on white men from the Midwest, people have better understanding about skin health, and they already moisturize. So remember, as a tattooer, if you send somebody home and say, put moisturizer on this 3 times a day, those people who already moisturize their body after a shower or any other time, they're still going to be doing that. They're not going to stop the self-care and only focus on the tattoo. They're still going to be taking care of their body. So while you may say putting it on there twice a day is fine, and you add in that one extra lotioning that they already have, they're going 3 times into it, which is probably going to make it much more moisturized than it needs to be, especially if you're using moisturizer that's oil-based and occlusive. Right, occlusives like Aquaphor, and where the skin is, we have a thing called transepidermal water loss, right? So we have moisture that's moving up and exhausting out. We use a product like an occlusive, like Aquaphor. What we're doing is we're putting a barrier on the top of it. That barrier stops that moisture loss from coming out, and it holds it in the skin. It's not really adding anything to it. That's why we have, you know, different types of like lotions or creams specifically that are going to add moisture into it while still adding a little bit of a barrier. But those occlusives, like any petroleum jelly, mineral oil based stuff, anything like that, it's all just going to be holding that in the skin so it doesn't escape. And the more often that you put it on, the more that moisture is going to build up inside, and the more likely it is to shut down those mechanisms that produce moisture, which is real bad. All right. I'm gonna get to number 4, but I'm afraid that my battery's gonna run out, so I'm gonna check on it. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. Batteries are good. We're doing awesome. All right, we'll get to the last one in this. I know this is a longer video. I apologize. Maybe if I didn't do my rant about the battery stuff and keep complaining about it, it would be shorter, but this is where we are. I'm in a garage talking to myself. Number 4 is keep it clean, right? And the keeping it clean is another thing that tends to really throw people off, because if you work a dirty job or something else, you know, where you're like, I work as a plumber and I'm in grease traps all day, having a fresh new tattoo could be really bad, right? You work in a concrete factory and you're getting covered in concrete dust. It's very difficult to keep it clean, so your natural inclination is to do something to try and keep it clean constantly, right? If you work in a job, we have a video about it, blink right there, a trick for trying to take care of your tattoo if you work in a labor job. So you can watch that if you want a trick, but we'll just talk about the actual washing stuff here, right? So washing your tattoo is good, right? The main reason why we do it is because on the skin surface, when it's healing, we start just getting gunk and other stuff that's on it, right? And the goal is not to scrub too much of this stuff off so we're irritating the skin and pulling it up and maybe removing some of the scabbing, but we're just trying to make sure that nothing extra is building up on top of it, like pet hair or dander, stuff like that you might get from your environment, right? So a normal cycle of skin health, when we're thinking about, you know, the whole body experience, most people will shower once a day, once every other day, and that's totally fine. I think that that's perfect because your skin is already adapted to that, right? The more that we wash our skin, the more that we have it wet, And the more that we need to moisturize it because we've washed it, then we're going to be messing with those mechanisms that actually produce that moisture inside the skin, right? And you can ask most people, like, would you shower 3 or 4 times a day? Most people would say, oh God, no, that would dry out my skin. Why would you do that to a tattoo? Right? It's just kind of common sense with this stuff. So you'll be like, so I've heard some clients actually say, well, but the tattoo is not like that. It's this, this, this. It doesn't matter. If it's going to affect all of your skin and the tattoo was done well, it's not such a big deal. It's not such a horrible wound that we have to sit there and constantly go over it. All the rubbing and washing and, you know, stretching and drying and then reapplying moisturizer, constantly touching it, moving it. All you're doing is just pulling that stuff apart that's trying to remodel itself inside of your skin while it's, you know, been poked 1,000,000+ times, regardless of what the size of the tattoo is, right? So most times you say this. Now, we'll get into the next bit here. If you want to keep clean, let's say you go to the gym. If you go to the gym, you're going to be like, well, I'm getting all sweaty. Is it okay to work out? That's a good video idea. I don't think I've done that. Yeah, it's totally fine. Go work out. Don't care. Just don't shower at gyms. They're disgusting places. It's just, right? Don't hop in the sweat room with a bunch of people with a fresh tattoo. It's going to get funky. You know, make sure you wear flip-flops any other time you don't have a fresh tattoo because you get your feet pregnant. That's not right to say. So yeah, if you go and you do a workout and you're doing whatever you're doing, that's fine. You can totally do your workouts. And whenever you're doing them, just make sure that you're not pushing your body to a point that where the tattoo is, you're experiencing some type of pain or discomfort, because that means you're stressing that area too much, right? If you are going out and you shower in the morning and you go normally do a shower after your workout, that's totally fine. You've already been doing it that way, so it's fine. Sweat coming out is sterile. It's when it exists on the body that it starts to get, you know, a whole bunch of nasty stuff in it. So leaving it on your body is actually bad. One thing to say though is, like, if you're going to go exercise, work out, any of this stuff, you want to make sure that you're wearing a proper attire, right? The loose fitting clothes that are breathable, not a lot of wicking stuff, right? We don't need wicking elements pulling extra moisture out of this. Even when you wear it during the day, if you aren't working out, we're going to want to just wear normal loose fitting clothes. You got some sweatpants, some shorts, something like that. Things that aren't going to be rubbing against it will help to make sure that you're not going to have additional irritation. And then as soon as you get home from whatever you're doing, go have a shower at your house. Use the products that you normally use. When you get out of the shower, don't towel dry it, don't dab dry it, nothing, just leave it alone, let it air dry. Everything that you're going to be doing with that tattoo when it's healing is going to influence how it heals. Now, if you had stitches, you wouldn't towel dry them. You'd leave them alone, right? Kind of treat the tattoo like that, even though it's not the same wound. The more you touch it, the worse it is. Thank you, piercers. The things they've said for years are applicable in tattooing. So that's it for today. Very long video, kind of breaking down these things. I got to tell you, like, traditional aftercare has been great. It's people reinterpreting it without knowing what they're talking about that has made it really wonky. And in a couple, maybe a couple coming months or so, we're going to be doing some product reviews about aftercare stuff, if we do get a chance to do that, kind of telling you what's going on with each one of the products. It's probably not going to be nice. I hope we don't get sued. But if we do get sued, it would be nice to have some money. So become a member for $1 a month. We don't give you anything, but we love you. Or go buy a hat. We've got a tattoo hat. It's pretty groovy. Anyways, that's it. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, hit us in the comments. Past that, Ryan for Better Tattooing, signing off.